Hey, night owls. Tuck in and dim the screen because this evening we're slipping down the candlelit alleys of a medieval red light district, an address the tour guides leave off the parchment maps. Before we start, do the usual legend tier favors. Tap the like button if you enjoy the weird corners of history, subscribe so you don't miss the rest of our 7-part wander, and drop a comment telling me which time zone you're fighting sleep in right now. Community roll call always warms the hearth. Fan on low? Perfect. Let's drift. Picture a crooked lane behind the city walls, the kind that never sees the bishop's procession. The air hums with low murmurs, lute strings, and the sticky perfume of ale mixed with rose water masking chamber pots. A wooden sign creaks overhead, its paint chipped to the point you can barely spot the crude heart, because literacy isn't a given, yet everyone knows what business lives there. You step inside. Candles glow, shadows stretch, and a dozen stories hushed by shame, desire, and survival unfold at once. Welcome to the brothel, but don't get comfortable. You're about to understand why pleasure was the most expensive currency of all, and the women who sold it paid in flesh, faith, and sometimes their very names. First myth to gut right here on the straw-strewn floor. Medieval prostitutes weren't always the carefree, jeweled courtesans painters later romanticized. Sure, a handful of high-end companions toasted with dukes behind velvet curtains, but most sex workers were just one misfortune away from starvation. Imagine you're an abandoned widow whose dowry disappeared under a plague cart, a runaway serf dodging the manor reeve, or a laundress whose wages can't buy winter fuel. You hear of a bawd, the brothel keeper, who offers bread, a straw mattress, and maybe protection from street gangs if you'll entertain clientele. Door number 1 is hunger. Door number 2 is moral damnation. Guess which door is at least warm? Now let's walk through the dangers before a single customer knocks. Start with the outfit, because clothing is everything when status is fragile. In many towns, prostitutes were forced by city ordinance to signal their trade. Some had to pin yellow veils to their hair, others were confined to striped hoods, and in London there was a short stint where red shoes marked the public women. Sounds like branding, right? Except branding cuts both ways. Sure, men found you easily, but so did moral vigilantes, jealous wives, and bored clerics looking to lecture. That swatch of fabric was a target, literally. Thugs could rough you up, bailiffs could fine you for walking outside your designated quarter. Even children learned to spit as you passed. And if you tried to ditch the uniform, fines spiraled, leading to debt prison. Visual shame was policy. Next, the landlord, your bawd, who might be more monster than matron. She pays the city a licensing fee, sometimes called the stews tax, which allows her to operate legally. To recoup, she squeezes the women. Bed linen? Rent it nightly. Candle stub? That's extra. Got pregnant? Bed space doubles because you're less profitable. Throw in a daily cut of earnings, plus the unspoken expectation that if a wealthy knight wants a free sample, you smile. In theory, you can leave, but where? The city guard knows your face, and plague years make honest work scarcer than relics that aren't fake. Speaking of plague, let's light a candle at the altar of medieval medicine, or what passed for it. You worry about STDs in 2024. They worried about the French pox, the burning, and mysterious swellings physicians called God's tokens. Treatments? Drink mercury. Yes, the metal that eats your nerves. Or maybe a paste of arsenic and vinegar applied directly. If it hurts, good. Means it's working. All while the parish priest preaches that sores are proof of divine punishment for lust. Imagine enduring that sermon while your joints ache and you can't stand straight without dizziness. Now slide forward to the moment the clientele arrives. A group of traders with coin purses clinking like tambourines file in. Negotiation begins. There's no standard price list pinned like a tavern menu. It's haggled, rushed, and peppered with threats. A common bargain might feed you a bowl of pottage, but if the customer decides after the fact he overpaid, you're powerless. Brothel brawls were so common that many cities stationed constables outside on feast days. The constable's bribe? Free services, of course. Call it hazard pay. But tonight a more delicate guest slips in, a young cleric in minor orders. He's sworn to celibacy, but logic crumbles faster than parchment in rain. Church law states he can't spill seed, so you're urged to perform non-fornicating relief. He fears hellfire, you fear non-payment. By dawn, he leaves behind a half-whispered confession and a wooden token promising future silver. Tokens rarely convert. Your ribs still show under the corset ties. Hunger leads to strategy. You learn to upsell: spices, scented water, love potions. Where do you get them? From the local herbalist who keeps her mortar under lock, because if caught vending witchcraft, she and her clients might meet the pyre. You dilute rose oil with lard, color vinegar with crushed beetles, claim it staves off impotence. Does it work? Who's checking? The placebo effect was invented long before the university. Now, let's step outside the brothel walls because your troubles don't leave when the shutters close. The town council meets to discuss public morality. Plague recedes, prosperity flickers, and upstanding wives pressure aldermen to cleanse the streets. Overnight, ordinances shift. Brothels shuttered, working women banished beyond the river. Those who remain are jailed until they raise a redemption fee. Where does a destitute woman raise coin? She sells her only asset, again, this time to jailers. Freedom costs double, and even if you find a patron, the fairy tale ending comes with thorns. Suppose a knight takes you as a kept woman. Suddenly you're monogamous, housed in a small cottage outside the city, wardrobe improved, but you're invisible to law. If he rides to war and doesn't return, his heirs toss you out. If you bear a child, its legitimacy is nil. Inheritance laws slam shut. One epidemic, one bad debt, and you're back on the lane, older, labeled worn, earning half. Let's not forget the spiritual ledger. Medieval Europe was a cosmic scoreboard. Every act tallied toward eternal bliss or damnation. Priests offered penance tariffs, a set number of prayers or coins to offset sins. But sex work was considered a habitual sin, meaning penance stacked endlessly. You might crawl to mass at dawn, thrust pennies into alms boxes, still convinced purgatory will roast you like a pig on Michaelmas. The burden of guilt, heavier than the coin purse you cling to. Yet in crooked cracks of history, camaraderie blossoms. Women form informal guilds, share sickness cures, hide each other from violent customers, pool money for funerals because families often refuse bodies. They invent coded whistles to signal danger, scratch symbols on door frames to warn of bailiff raids. These tiny rebellions stitch a net beneath an abyss, and some wield unexpected influence. During festival weeks, authorities license prostitutes to parade because antsy men spend more coin when temptation strolls. The city coffers swell from taxes on drink and dice. The irony? Women reviled from the pulpit are indirectly funding the cathedral's new bell tower. By the way, remember that like button? Give it a little medieval tap if you're still awake. It helps other night readers stumble into our dimly lit tavern of tales. And if you've got the stamina, share in the comments any historic myths you want busted in future episodes. I scroll through each one while sipping questionable herbal tea at 3 a.m. Slide into the same narrow alley, only this time the torchlight feels heavier, flickering like it already knows the secrets we're about to pry open. The city sleeps, or pretends to, while the brothel quarter exhales a sigh thick with yeast, wood smoke, and something sharper like iron left out in the rain. Tonight, we're following one working woman past the cheap curtains and into the places history rarely draws, because the price of pleasure didn't end when the customer staggered away. It bled into law, medicine, plague medicine, and even the royal treasury. Ready? Place your feet quietly on the cobbles. The watchman's lantern just rounded the corner. Our guide, let's call her Aldith, didn't choose this life out of lust or laziness. She was 11 when a spring flood drowned the family fields. One sister entered service as a kitchen drudge, another became a lay novice in a convent, and Aldith, gangly and quick-tongued, slipped between the cracks until hunger made the brothel's warm hearth look like heaven's gate. The bawd who recruited her swore she'd work, only light duties at first, serving ale, changing sheets. Then came winter, coin ran thin, and the bawd suggested one customer just for warming. That's how slope becomes slide. First lesson Aldith learned, taxes make strange bedfellows. In most late medieval towns, brothels were semi-legal and heavily taxed, not out of mercy but out of fiscal pragmatism. City aldermen levied tallage of women, or stews duty, siphoning copper coins for public works, paving stones, a new font for the parish church, sometimes a leper house. Imagine kneeling through Mass while hearing Father John praise the new stained glass window, funded in part by last night's sins. The congregation doesn't know, but Aldith does, and she bites her lip so the laugh stays silent. To keep revenue flowing, municipal statutes created a rough safety net. In Southwark, bawds had to hire a surgeon, usually an undertrained barber, to inspect the workers for visible sores every Saturday. On paper, it was public health. In practice, the barber glanced, shrugged, and pocketed his groat. If he did spot lesions, the woman was quarantined in a pest house nicknamed Lock, as in locked away. Conditions there made the brothel loft feel like a bishop's guest room. Straw crawling with lice, vinegar water as medicine, and priests who visited more to sniff scandal than offer comfort. Let's talk plague, because nothing stripped away tolerance faster than the Black Death. During outbreaks, authorities branded sex workers as infection vectors, ordering them beyond city limits. Picture Aldith trekking through February sleet toward a makeshift camp by the river, entire livelihood packed in one threadbare cloak. Yet irony strikes again. Hospitals overwhelmed by plague begged for caretakers willing to wash sores and dispose of corpses. Guess who took the job? Women already used to society's filth, physical and moral. For a bowl of gruel and a promise of absolution, Aldith scrubbed pustules while chanting the prayer for the dying. When the outbreak ebbed, some towns quietly welcomed her back. They needed their tax base after all. Speaking of prayer, religion both damned and shielded. The church thundered against fornication, but also issued penitential tariffs, setting prices for absolution. A wealthy merchant might pay 12 pence and be clean. Aldith, penniless, whispered Ave Marias by the dozen, uncertain if heaven took installments. Some monasteries even ran Magdalene houses, shelters where former prostitutes could repent if they surrendered every earthly possession at the door and endured lifelong seclusion. Freedom traded for salvation, chains exchanged for veils. Now slip upstairs where bedchambers line a crooked hall. Aldith carries a jug of watered wine to a customer, a spice trader who reeks of cardamom and self-importance. Negotiation is rapid fire. She recites a practiced litany. For the simple embrace, 1 penny. If you wish the Venetian manner, 3. For silence after 2. The trader smirks, offers a base copper coin polished to look silver. Aldith's eyes measure weight, edge wear, mint mark. She can spot a clipped penny in candlelight, because clipped pennies could mean lost supper. She accepts, pockets it, but mentally tallies the deficit. She'll have to pick up an extra client later to cover the baud's cut. Violence? Always pacing outside the door. Knives were banned in brothels by municipal code, so patrons hid belt daggers in boot tops. When tempers flared, jealousy, drunk boasting, or the ugly revelation of disease, someone bled. Aldith once plugged a stab wound with linen, kept pressure until the constable hauled the aggressor away. Her heroism earned exactly no discount on rent, yet friendships sprout like weeds in manure. Aldith braids the hair of a younger girl, Sibylla, whose accent sings of rural Devon. They share clove oil for toothaches, secrets of customers' tender spots, and a joint savings purse stitched into a mattress seam. Dream goal? Buy 2 seats on a pilgrim ship to Compostela, then vanish into another town as artisan widows. Reality check. The purse rarely weighs more than a dozen pence. Winter firewood eats ambition fast. Let's sidestep into politics. Royal courts periodically crack down on stews. Richard II issued ordinances banning brothels near Westminster because dignitaries complained of nighttime racket. Within weeks, the area's landlords petitioned for repeal, citing economic collapse. Brewers, bakers, laundresses losing income. The crown quietly softened the order. Money, once more, outranked morality. But the steepest price Aldith pays isn't coin, it's time. Scholars estimate the average medieval prostitute's career lasted 7 to 10 years before age, illness, or violence forced retirement. With no dowry, no apprenticeship, future options shrank to begging or serving as wet nurse if she still could bear milk. Some found niches as fortune tellers, leveraging the reputation for forbidden knowledge. Others vanished in plague pits. Anonymous bones cataloged today by archaeologists who note pelvic stress markers and calloused knee joints. Silent proof of a life spent kneeling for reasons rarely devotional. One more candle before dawn. Aldith sits alone and writes. Yes, writes. Because while many women were illiterate, some brothels hired scribes to teach basic letters. A literate prostitute could keep accounts, draft petitions, maybe blackmail an adulterous noble if things turned sour. She inks a prayer in clumsy Latin. Domine miserere me peccatressis. Lord, have mercy on me, a sinful woman. The script wobbles like a drunk path, but intent glows steady. She folds the scrap, hides it beneath the mattress with the coin purse. Insurance for the soul, just in case coin fails. The baud's rooster crow barely fades before the city's bells start a low bronze conversation. First the guild hall, then the friar's cloister, and finally the tower clock, whose slow clang drips onto every tiled roof like cold rain. You feel the district yawn. Brewers shove open hatch doors. Stable hands slap life into sleepy nags, and aldermen's clerks hurry to the counting house, ink already smudged on their cuffs. But before the sun can bleach away last night's secrets, We slip through a side gate that swings only one way, into London's official brothel street, Bankside, where pleasure was franchised, regimented, and taxed until the ledger itself moaned. City fathers called these houses stews, after the steamy bathrooms that once hid inside. They set laws with the same legalese used for grain weights or bridge tolls. Every prostitute must register, pay weekly house money, and swear not to entice clerics. Guess how well that worked. They even mandated colored hoods for working women, bright striped linen so the moral could cross the street in advance. In practice, most girls turned the hoods inside out the moment dusk hugged the Thames, because anonymity was safer than regulation. Our companion Aldith, still rubbing sleeplessness from her eyes, cues at the bailiff's window to drop a halfpenny tax token. The bailiff doesn't glance up. He recognizes her voice the way a farmer recognizes rain. 2 benches away, a monk in travel stains flinches at her presence, then quickly signs himself. Irony, the token he just gave to beg absolution from St. Mary Overy will, by sunset, mingle in the same coffers as Aldith's sin penny. Salvation and damnation tossed in a single purse. Bureaucracy can't afford doctrinal purity. Contracts come next. Yes, written contracts. Bawds kept parchment ledgers where each woman's term was inked. 3 months minimum, renewable, with clauses on illness, theft, or pregnancy. If a girl became with child, statutes barred her from work after the belly showed, but the bawds still charged room rent. Debt ballooned faster than an unborn babe. Many infants were fostered out to wet nurses in the suburbs. Mortality soared there. Some nurses juggled 5, 6, 7 foundlings. Graves recorded as John No-Name, son of a common woman. Tiny tragedies filed under administrative headings. Now step into the physic lane, where apothecaries hawk miracle salves. Among the jars of saffron and dragon's blood sits a far more lucrative trade: mercury ointment. Barber surgeons swore it purged the French pox. Rubbed on sores, it stung like hellfire and poisoned the liver, but customers demanded it, and Aldith sometimes used it too. Better agony than being barred from the hot room inspection. The bawd deducted salve costs from her earnings. Dead again, layered like rotting onion skins. Violence management. The stews hired bouncers, ruffians of the Bankside, ex-soldiers hardened by border skirmishes. They enforced the unspoken code that kept business from bleeding customers away. Rule 1. Never kill a client inside the house. Drag him to the alley first. Rule 2. If a worker screamed and it wasn't playful, a ruffian answered within 3 breaths. But ruffians kept their own brutal tariff. Each woman tipped them a groat a week for safety. Refusal meant slower response next time a belt knife flashed. Yet even brutality bowed to theater. Every midsummer, aldermen paraded the stew district on horseback, white gloves pressed to perfumed kerchiefs. Bawds hung fresh rushes, draped windows in linen, and assembled their girls along the street like mannequins of contrition. Aldith curtsied, eyes down, while inwardly calculating which alderman's son frequented her chamber just last week. Hypocrisy cloaked in silk approval. But those moments also held strange empowerment. The city's rulers acknowledging, however grudgingly, that without these women, half the riverfront economy would grind to sullen halt. Cross now to Paris, because vice was a cosmopolitan franchise. In the quartier of the Bourg l'Abbey, brothels paid rent directly to the Abbey of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Monks collected in silence, then funded manuscript copying projects with proceeds. Somewhere in the Bibliothèque Nationale lies a gilded psalter lettered with money, Aldith's Parisian counterpart earned. Imagine those prayers chanted over pages bought by flesh. Back in England, royal wars drained manpower. In 1415, as Henry V mustered troops for Agincourt, stews boomed. Soldiers on leave spent hazard pay before crossing the Channel. Bards later sang of chivalric glory, but Aldith remembers patched tunics smelling of campfire and fear. Some men wept in her arms, begged for locks of hair as talismans against French arrows. She snipped token strands, wrapped them in scrap linen, and thought, will they return? If they do, will they still pay? War was bad for bodies, good for business, at least short term. Lives braided together, Aldith, Sibylla, an aging Polish woman called Goska, who spoke 5 words of English but poured ale with a smile bright enough to bridge languages. They shared more than pillows, they shared disease. When Goska coughed blood, the bawd sent her to the Lock Hospital. She never came back. City records note only foreign woman, dead of flux. Aldith etched a tiny cross on the dormer beam, a private ledger of loss. Hope? It flickered in unlikely niches. Some women amassed tiny fortunes by catering to nobility's rarer appetites, reading poetry nude, performing lute songs, or simply listening to confessions no priest could hear. A handful retired, married innkeepers became respectable matrons, warning daughters away from errors of youth. History seldom documents them. Quiet exits leave no scandalous parchment. And yet activism, yes, activism, found roots here too. In 1492, a coalition of London prostitutes petitioned the mayor for regulation of violent clients, citing scripture on just governance. The mayor ignored them, but the document survives, ink still legible, female voices demanding civic protection centuries before suffrage. Their plea reads, "We are weak vessels, but citizens too." Aldith couldn't sign. She marked an X. Dusk again. She lights a tallow dip, counts coins, binds her linen breasts to look fuller, and applies a wash of iris root to mask mercury sores. You stand beside her, heartbeat echoing the street's drum. Another night spins. She whispers, "Stay or go, friend?" Because you could step back into respectability now, or follow deeper to see how an unexpected queen, a brewing reformation, and the invention of printed broadsheets will either shatter or save her world. Moonlight slicks across the Thames like spilled pewter, and every oar stroke from a late-running ferry hums through the damp air as if the river itself is muttering gossip. You and Aldith slip beneath the creaking sign of the Golden Pike, the largest stew on Bankside, its painted fish oddly pious for a house of compulsory sin. Inside, heat smacks your cheeks. The throat catch of wood smoke, human musk, cheap ambergris, and the sour tang of turned ale. A viol player saws a single droning note, while a tooth-gap jester tries, without success, to juggle 3 pewter cups. One clangs to the rush-strewn floor and rolls, gathering straw and laughter in equal measure. Aldith heads straight for the back stairs, you in tow. Tonight isn't for dalliance. Tonight is for survival. The stew's trumpeter just returned from the Guildhall with rumors. Parliament is debating yet another plague ordinance. If the Black Death blooms again, brothels will be shuttered first. Workers expelled across city walls for the preservation of Christian souls. That decree earned the loudest scoff you've ever heard from a bawd. Souls? They're worried about which bodies to blame when coffins fill too fast. Upstairs, chamber doors line a twisting corridor like poorly kept teeth. You pass one where 2 men haggle over price, another where someone sobs softly, and a third that smells of rosewater poured too heavily to hide vomit. Aldith's room is small enough that when she lights her rush candle, the flame illuminates both walls at once. A straw tick lies on a worm-eaten frame. A chipped ewer of river water waits in the corner. Above, a broken roof tile grants a square glimpse of the night sky, perfect for prayers or escape. She folds her cloak, producing from its lining a thin pamphlet fresh from a Cambridge press, The Godly Discourse Against Inordinate Lusts. It's illegal contraband here, not for its chastity sermon, but for its seditious margin notes. Someone has scrawled, "What of princes who rut like stags?" If caught, possession alone could brand her a heretic. Why keep it? Because knowledge is barter. Learned customers, clerics in disguise, crave forbidden books. They pay double for conversation that stretches their minds while their bodies tangle in carnal routine. Aldith isn't merely flesh for hire. She's a smuggler of ideas. She hides parchments under the straw tick, where lice are too numerous for bailiffs to search. Tonight, though, she has a new risk. A mysterious patron has requested a reading of that very pamphlet, to be delivered at the Palace of Westminster. Imagine it. A prostitute climbing Parliament's back stairs, past tapestries of crusading knights, into a candlelit side chamber where barons whisper policy. If she's discovered, heads will roll, beginning with her own. But the payment offered, 6 golden angels, could obliterate every debt, even buy a release writ from the bawd. Freedom's scent is intoxicating. She accepts. Preparation means disguise. She pulls from a linen satchel an ivory-handled razor and begins hacking her auburn hair to shoulder length, each lock falling like confessionals to the floor. She powders her face with ground iris root to dull the mercury blotches, then darkens her brows with soot, drawing calm confidence where trembling fear wants to live. You hold the rush light steady. Wax drips over your knuckles, but you dare not flinch. Before dawn, you both cross London Bridge, its houses looming like cliffs above the frozen black water. A baker's boy nods sleepily, balancing wicker baskets of half-risen dough. The pamphlet lies sewn into Aldith's doublet. She's now Mistress Helen, a lady's companion summoned for early prayers. At least, that's the fiction her handler provided. Handler? Meet Master Simon, waiting under the shadow of St. Magnus. Simon used to be a cathedral subdeacon. Excommunication changed his career trajectory. He deals in secrets, heretical tracts, debt notes, official pardons. Tonight he offers a parchment with the royal seal, genuine, recently stolen, granting safe passage to the bearer on business for his grace's council. Forgeries usually mimic ink. This one mimics authority with chilling accuracy. They head north through crooked lanes behind the shuttered Goldsmith Row. Here, City Watch patrols in twos because single guards vanish, kidnapped for ransom, or pressed into river gangs. Simon hands Aldith a dagger no longer than your thumb. Only for cloth, he jokes, meaning flesh. She slides it into her sleeve. At Newgate, the sun finally teases a red hem across the roofs. Westminster's towers, still candles in the gray, loom ahead. A gauntlet of beggars lines the lane. Plague's memory lingers in every hollow cheek. A one-eyed veteran cries, "Any alms for a brother of Agincourt?" Simon flicks him a farthing, but Aldith pauses, pressing a penny into his palm. Not charity, insurance. Beggars are the city's best informants. They remember faces that show kindness when authorities do not. They reach the palace back gate. Simon bows, offering the seal. The porter squints at his wax-stained lantern. A tense breath. Then hinges groan and they're inside, walking cloisters echoing with Gregorian chant. Simon peels off. Aldith ascends a spiral stair alone. You follow only in imagination. Guests beyond this point need liveried passes. Downstairs you linger with the scullions. Each carries gossip as readily as trenchers. They whisper of a new tax on imported tapestries, a rumor that the Queen is barren, and that a comet was sighted above Canterbury. Sure sign of plague. Meanwhile, upstairs, Aldith reads from the pamphlet to a trio of shadowed lords who sip mulled wine and nod at every veiled insult against ecclesiastical tyranny. Their laughter is a soft blade. When she finishes, they pay, but one grasps her wrist. Our wives pray at dawn, we pray at dusk. Return this evening, and we shall commission a sequel. Sequels are dangerous. Repeat visits weave loyalty where secrecy must reign. She feigns acceptance, yet fear rips through her like winter wind through that roof tile gap. On the walk back, she tells Simon, "Tonight's too soon. I need days." He shrugs, commerce sets its own calendar. Mid-afternoon finds her back in Bankside, just as stewholders hold council. They've heard of plague deaths in Bristol, outbreak headed east. The stews may be closed within the month. Panic mixes with opportunity. Price spikes are inevitable. Bawds debate whether to hoard linen or laudanum for the inevitable coughing fits. Aldith listens, saying nothing. She's planning her own quarantine, preferably in the countryside, far from bailiffs and lords in shadow. Her escape requires 3 steps: money, forged Freeman papers, and transport. Money, she has the angels. Papers, Simon claims he can deliver, for a fee. Transport, a barge master named Willoughby sails to Kingston each market day. He asks no questions if palms are greased. Tonight's plan crystallizes, but life mocks plans. As dusk bleeds, the district marshal storms the Golden Pike. A bailiff's clerk was murdered near Bishopsgate, throat cut ear to ear. Witnesses saw a woman in a striped hood flee, a stew woman. They sweep the brothels, demanding each girl stand forth for inspection. Aldith stands last, heart hammering so loud you fear the marshal will hear. His torchlight pauses on her chopped hair. He narrows eyes, but spotting no hood, moves on. Relief slumps her shoulders, but she knows anonymity's fragile. Someone is hunting a scapegoat. Midnight, she slips to the Thames stairs, angels hidden in her boot, pamphlet ashes scattered behind a brazier in case of search. Willoughby's barge rocks on black water, but under the arch, ruffian shadows lurk, the bawd's debt collectors. Word travels faster than the tide. They know she holds gold meant for the house. You want to shout warning, yet the script of the night is already inked. She pivots, not toward river, but toward St. Mary Overy's graveyard. Crypts there connect to a lost Lollard tunnel rumored to exit beyond the city wall. She vanishes into broken slate and ivy, collectors cursing behind. You follow maybe 10 paces before darkness swallows her completely. Only the echo of her breath guides you. Then, silence. Hours later, dawn again paints London pink, but Aldith is gone. Did she reach Kingston? Did Simon betray her route? Did plague outrun them both? City records never note her name again, but a parish in Kent lists a Helen Carter, gentlewoman, wife of a merchant, benefactor to Foundling Hospital, deceased 1478. Could be coincidence, or the second life of the girl who read banned pamphlets. History offers no closure, only threads we tug at until they fray. Yet these unseen women altered ledgers, financed wars, spread doctrines, and birthed unacknowledged heirs to power. They were footnotes then. They're the story now. Before the rooster even thinks about crowing, You're already ankle-deep in dew, following the faintest trail through a thicket of hawthorn that claws at your cloak like gossiping hands. You've been on Aldith's scent since she slipped beneath Southwark's tombstones 2 nights ago, and the city behind you has shrunk to a bruise of smoke on the horizon. Now the only witnesses are startled hares and the ghost-white wafers of mist that drift low over the meadow. If you've made it this far with me, through plague gossip, pamphlet smuggling, and a dagger small enough to look innocent, hit that thumbs up and type lantern in the chat so I know you're still carrying the light with us. And if you're new here, tap subscribe. We spin these midnight histories every week, and the road only gets stranger from here. The trail Aldith chose is older than the Romans, the Pilgrim's Way. But for every saint who once trudged toward Canterbury, a dozen highwaymen now loiter along its hedgerows. She walks fast, hood pulled low, clutching a bundle that is part satchel, part reliquary. Inside lie her last 2 golden angels, a strip of pickled eel, and a vellum page torn from the godly discourse she dared not burn. Why keep a fragment? Because symbols anchor resolve, and Aldith's resolve is all that stands between her and the fate of countless other fallen women, branded, banished, or buried nameless in a pest pit. By noon, she reaches the coaching inn at Farnborough. The signboard, a cracked painting of St. George, swings so violently in the wind it looks as though the dragon might escape. Inside, the chimney-piece roars, and a potboy ladles stew that smells of marjoram and hooves. At a corner table, 3 wool merchants gossip about snowstorms in Flanders, claiming the harbors are frozen solid, no cloth imports for months. The innkeeper's wife drifts past Aldith, eyeing the ragged hem of her cloak. In a place like this, clothes speak before mouths do. Aldith answers with a coin, ordering a cup of nettle tea, a drink just refined enough to hint at gentle breeding without shouting it. She needs a ride upriver to Kingston, but Willoughby's barge departs tomorrow, and the dock is miles away. So she listens. Inns are marketplaces for information, after all. That's where she hears about Sir Osric de Bray, minor knight, major drunk, currently upstairs nursing a hangover that could fell a bull. His house lies west of Kingston, and tomorrow his groom will hire cart horses for the journey home. If Aldith can ingratiate herself, she can ride under his protection. No questions, no watchman halting a knight's party. Simple, except Sir Osric's reputation for petulant cruelty precedes him. The merchants below whisper how he once fined his own serfs for muddying the road before his procession. Aldith must charm him, but charm often has collateral costs. She waits until dusk when Osric finally emerges, blinking like an owl yanked from its hollow. His doublet reeks of spilled claret. 2 rings are missing from his fingers, pawned, perhaps, for more drink. Aldith approaches with a curtsy so demure it fools even you, and you've watched her sharpen daggers with that same hand. "My lord," she says, "forgive the boldness. I seek passage west, yet bandits crowd the lanes like flies on offal. Might I ride under your noble banner in exchange for humble service? I can recite psalms to speed the miles and tend the fire when dusk descends." Osric's eyes, rimmed red, scan her frame, lingering at points that prove her profession no matter how modestly she's wrapped. He smirks. "Service, is it? I dare say I've coined for service." She forces a grateful smile, but you sense the knot in her stomach wind tighter than a lute string. Dawn finds the knight's small retinue rumbling along the hogback ridge of the North Downs. Aldith rides side saddle on a pack mule, the knight beside her in a creaking cart too gaudy for its age. Frost glitters on every bramble, each exhale ghosts the air. The groom, a timid lad named Rain, leads the train, humming a folk tune about lovers turned to swans. Aldith listens, memorizing the melody. Songs are currency among tavern minstrels, and she hoards every coin she can. At noon they pause near Box Hill, where a lone yew tree, bent by time, watches the valley. The knight dozes, head lolling, leaving Aldith free to speak with Rain. She learns that Osric owes half the taverns in Surrey, that bailiffs stalk him as hounds stalk a lame deer, and that his manor Renford is rumored bankrupt. "But there's one treasure left," Rain whispers, eyes darting to be sure his master sleeps. "A casket of Venetian glass, bright as dragonfly wings. Folks say he hides it in the old solar. Treasure rumors tick lodestones in Aldith's mind. Glass that fine could ransom a small convent, or buy her passage beyond England altogether. Still, theft is dangerous. Osric's men might care little for wages, but they guard their lord's pride with steel. They make Kingston by sunset, crossing the Thames at the timber bridge that smells of wet oak and horse dung. Aldith could peel away here, catch Willoughby's barge upriver, but glass glints in her imagination like a holy relic. She stays. Renford Manor stands tired among leafless apple orchards, its gatehouse half collapsed, moat choked with reeds. Inside, servants move with the lethargy of people who have not been paid in months. Osric shouts orders, yet none are obeyed with haste. Aldith, announced as Mistress Helen, is given a garret room above the buttery. The maid who shows her up whispers, "Stay near your candle tonight." Rats as big as kittens scurry the rafters, rats she can handle. It's Osric's knock at midnight that freezes her pulse. He staggers in, breath smelling like the barrels below. "Psalms, woman," he slurs, slumping onto a stool. "My father prayed when spirits came. Now spirits haunt me." She begins softly, Miserere me Deus, but halfway through he grips her wrist. Not Latin, they whisper Saxon in hell. She shifts, singing an English lullaby instead. His head droops. When snores rumble, she eases free and slips downstairs. The corridor to the solar yawns black. She counts doorways by memory of layout gleaned from rain. The solar's latch resists, but the thumb dagger prees it. Inside, moonlight reveals cabinets gutted of valuables, save for one casket on the mantel, exactly as rumored. Cobalt glass veined with silver, foreign and fragile. She lifts the lid. Inside, not jewels, but rolled parchments sealed with crimson wax. She unrolls one. It's not a deed, nor a love letter, but an accounts ledger, payments made to a certain Bishop de Crayon for absolution of carnal crimes. Another scroll lists names of noblewomen alongside sums and dates. Blackmail? Indulgence fees? Either could ruin bishop and knight alike. Aldith's earlier life flashes, bailiffs, debts, forced silence. Here in her hands lies leverage that could buy not just freedom, but protection. She pockets the scrolls, then pauses. The glass casket itself would fetch coin, but carrying it invites discovery. She leaves it. An empty reliquary is less suspicious than a missing one. Back in her garret, she stitches the scrolls into her petticoat hem, fingers trembling yet deft. Dawn creeps when a clamor erupts, servants yelling, Osric roaring. Someone's discovered the open solar. Aldith smooths her skirts and descends as the household gathers. Osric accuses thieves, servants protest innocence. His fist slams a trestle so hard a candlestick falls. Then his gaze lands on Aldith, and suspicion flames. "You, stranger, search her." Rain hesitates, but duty outweighs pity. Aldith feels hands pat sleeves, test pockets. They reach her skirts, then falter. Rain's cheeks redden, propriety shields her. Osric, furious, declares, "Lock her in the garderobe till I fetch the sheriff." A garderobe cell, stone walls dripping slime, a wooden bench with the evil hole yawning black below. They shove her inside, bar the door. Darkness presses like damp wool, stench curls from the chute. She breathes shallow, thinking. Scrolls still safe. Time, maybe hours before sheriff arrives. Garderobes often vent to the moat. Some have access ladders for night soil removers. She feels along the stone, finds iron rungs slick with moss. A rat skitters past her boot. She descends into fetid gloom until boots splash in cold mud at the chute's base. Outside, frogs croak under a bruise-colored sky. She wades through reeds, emerges behind a cider shed. Osric's hounds bark in the yard, but wind favors her scent. She skirts orchard rows until the lane appears, then runs, skirts sodden, scrolls slapping her thigh. At Kingston Quay, Willoughby's barge is already casting off, sail belly white against dawn. She waves a kerchief. He squints, recognizes, and orders oars halted. She leaps aboard, nearly collapsing. Willoughby smirks. "Couldn't resist city trouble, eh?" She offers one golden angel. He nods, steering into mist where the river wipes footprints from memory. During the slow glide upriver, Aldith pores over the scrolls. They detail a ring trafficking women from stews to noble estates, clients seeking novelty or secrecy. Lists show payments to church officials to hush investigations and to bailiffs to retrieve escapees. One name repeats, Simon, her handler. Rage surges, betrayal crawls under her skin like scabies, yet rage cools into calculation. With these documents she could destroy Simon or recruit him. Evidence is power. Wielded wrong, it cuts the hand that holds it. At Reading, plague flags flutter red on several doors. The barge moors downstream. Crew forbid landing. Willoughby plans to camp in a meadow until quarantine lifts. That night, Aldith dreams of straw mats and children's laughter, a future unimaginable days ago. She wakes certain. She'll sell the scrolls not for coin but sanctuary. A convent in need of leverage against bishops might trade lifetime refuge for proof of ecclesiastical corruption. Which convent? She recalls a pilgrim's tale of St. Bride's in Somerset, famed for brewing and scholarship, yet ever at odds with the local bishop over tithe disputes. Perfect. She'll travel west. Travel means companions. The next morning, a wagon train grinds along the towpath. Wool sacks, cider barrels, and atop one wagon, a gaunt friar named Brother Patrick, cheeks hollow, yet eyes bright. He haggles passage with Willoughby, 2 psalms for every mile unmolested by river pirates. Aldith notices his satchel brims with quills and sealed letters. Couriers in habits, invisible to guards, invaluable to rebels. She approaches, offering to share dried eel in exchange for stories. He smiles thinly, agrees. Patrick speaks of uprisings brewing in Yorkshire, peasants incensed at new poll taxes. He claims the King's Council will double levies to fund a French campaign. Plague or no plague, coffers must swell. Aldith listens, weighing risks. A kingdom distracted by revolt might let stews burn without trial. Bishops might trade anything for peace. The scrolls in her hem feel heavier. Night falls near Swallowfield, where an abandoned chapel leans like a drunk at evensong. They shelter inside, wind whistling through missing panes. Patrick writes letters by candle stub. Aldith warms by a broken altar. She asks whom he writes. He pauses. Friends who need truth faster than rumor travels. She considers revealing her documents, yet hesitates. Trust grows like ivy, slow and twining, unable to choose what it clings to. Instead, she asks if he knows St. Bride's. He does. Pilgrims say its library rivals Glastonbury's. Nuns there copy texts banned elsewhere. Her heart quickens. If they preserve forbidden words, they might preserve her. At dawn, Willoughby finishes repairs. Barge heads west again. But news arrives from a passing wherry. Osric de Bray posted a bounty. 10 marks for Helen Carter, thief and seductress. Description: hair cropped, eyes amber, scar on left wrist. Willoughby eyes Aldith's wrist. She pulls sleeve down. His loyalty costs more than one angel. She offers the second. He grins. Never liked Osric anyway. Still, bounty hunters will ride faster than riverboats. She must disembark at the next ford and cut across Berkshire woods. Patrick decides to join. Truth couriers find danger delightful. They borrow a donkey from a charcoal burner, promise its return at the Shire Oak. Aldith notes, debts of kindness must be repaid or haunt you, like bailiff's shadows. 3 days' trek delivers them to the Vale of White Horse. In the chalk hillside, the ancient horse stretches, its lines like pale lightning. Locals say recutting its trenches each midsummer keeps plague away. Aldith traces a finger along the chalk ridge. Superstition or not, she finds hope in its persistence. Centuries of storms couldn't wash it away. They lodge at a grange belonging to St. Bride's, proving they near sanctuary. The prioress herself arrives by candle lantern, habit patched yet eyes sharp as a falcon's. She listens to Aldith's tale, then to Patrick's witness. The scrolls unrolled across a rough oak table glimmer like serpents of ink. The prioress makes no outward sign, but her knuckles whiten. With these, she whispers, we can shatter the bishop's chokehold on our tithe. She offers refuge. A cell with a window to the herb garden, duties in the scriptorium, anonymity under the name Sister Agnella. Aldith, now Agnella, sags in relief so deep it feels like drowning turned to baptism. Yet bargains cut both ways. The prioress demands one final task: deliver a copy of the damning ledger to London's Lollard sympathizers, to spread rot in the bishop's roots. Agnella must return to the city she fled, cloaked not in scarlet sin, but in veiled righteousness. The irony tastes of wormwood and purpose, so our once stew girl finds herself balancing on the blade edge between corruption and reform, wielding secrets sharper than any dagger. Tomorrow she heads east again, back into the wasp nest, scrolls hidden anew, but this time armored by a sisterhood and a name reborn. The city welcomes you back with the sound of rain hissing on a million slate roofs, as though London is whispering through clenched teeth. You step off the hay-smelling wagon onto Cheapside mud, scrape filth from your boots with a broken oyster shell, and pull your cloak tighter. Remember, if a guard studies your face for longer than a heartbeat, you're merely a lay sister purchasing vellum. Nothing else. Got it? Good. Now, before we wade any deeper into this tangle of alleyways and double crosses, smash that like button so the algorithm keeps the lanterns lit, and drop Inkpot in the comments to tell the sisterhood you arrived safely. Still lurking? Hit subscribe. Smugglers and scribes ride shotgun here every week. The parchment packets ride against your ribs like tiny drum beats. 2 are copies for the Lollard Circle Father Patrick named, evidence of clerical vice carefully recopied by St. Bride's nimblest scribe. The 3rd is the original ledger, sealed with the prioress's emerald green wax, insurance. Lose that, and the Bishop of Winchester sleeps easier. Keep it, and every price on your head doubles. Simple arithmetic of power. Step 1 is locating the broken lantern, a wine shop in Paternoster Row. where dissenting clerks trade banned sermons for Portuguese nutmeg. The place has changed since you last risked these streets. Plague boards nailed to door frames, white crosses daubed on shutters. Watchmen paid a penny a corpse to drag the dead to Finsbury pits. Misery clings to London like soot, and misery breeds hunger for scandal. Inside the wine shop, oil lamps throw sickly halos against smoke-grimed beams. A minstrel plucks a psaltery by the hearth. His song sounds cheerful until you notice the lyrics, verses about Judith beheading Holofernes. Approaching the bar, you murmur the passphrase Patrick drilled. Does the owl still sing at matins? The tapster, a barrel-chested woman with one eyebrow that arches like a drawbridge, jerks her chin toward a curtained booth. Behind the curtain sits a gray-bearded notary, ink-stained fingers drumming a codex. You slide into the shadows opposite him, lay the first packet on the table. He doesn't open it. He weighs it like fruit, nods once, and pushes forward a purse. Inside, not coin, but 3 brass keys, each stamped with the sigil of St. Mary Overy's chapter house. They open the scriptorium where banned tracts are hidden. Your job is to swap in the second copy of the ledger, so if soldiers raid, they seize corruption with the bishop's seal. One righteous scandal, gift-wrapped. Night thickens. You slip from Paternoster toward the South Bank ferry, keys cold in your palm. A drizzle turns torches smoky. Fishwives huddle under awnings, cursing the damp. Mid-bridge, a child tugs your sleeve, a ragged news crier hawking broadsheets. "Murder in Southwark," he squeaks. The woodcut shows a dagger and a woman's silhouette. Beneath it, the magistrate offers 10 marks for one Helen Carter. Your heart flips. The alias still burns. You flip him a farthing, snatch a sheet, shove it inside your bodice. Poster ink bleeds in the rain, but the likeness, a hastily sketched face with cropped hair, remains. Across the river, Southwark stinks of malt and river sludge. The cathedral looms ahead, but first you duck into the ruins of the old Roman bathhouse where smugglers store contraband. There, an unexpected shape waits. Rain, Sir Osric's groom, cloak dripping, eyes wide with something like admiration or fear. "I followed," he says, voice trembling. "I can't serve that devil any longer. Trust, dangerous luxury." Yet Rain produced no cry as you robbed his master. You relax a fraction. He unveils a linen bundle, 3 of Osric's signet rings. "Payment," he says, "for freedom." Before you can answer, clattering hooves echo outside. Watch patrols. You yank Rain deeper into the vault as soldiers pass, cursing the rain. When quiet returns, Rain asks to join your cause. "I know every guard post from here to Winchester," he pleads. 2 allies are better than 1. You nod curt approval. Dawn bleeds pale when you break into St. Mary Overy's chapter house. The brass keys fit, hinges groan. The scriptorium smells of damp parchment and lamp oil. You place the second ledger copy amid Bishop's letters, careful to disturb no dust. But as you exit, a silhouette blocks the threshold. Canon Simon, the handler who sold you to stews, thought long vanished. He smiles with all the warmth of a winter sun. "Searching for absolution, Aldith? Fight, flee. Instead you speak. Words sharpened on sleepless nights pour forth. His crimes, your evidence, the bishop's name entwined. Shock flickers, then calculation hardens his jaw. "Give me the originals," he hisses, "and I'll clear the price on your head. A new life in Bruges, maybe." Behind you, Rain edges closer, dagger gleaming. You raise a hand to stop him. "Simon," you say, "we both know peace is a myth, but leverage is real." You propose a pact. Simon escorts you and Rain west, posing as confessors gathering tithes. In return, St. Bride's will deliver half the ledgers to his enemies, sparing him. Treachery traded for treachery. After a breathless pause, he agrees. Survival loves uneasy friendships. Days later, your small procession rides the pilgrim road again. Simon in priest's garb, Rain as servant, you veiled as a penitent widow. Storm clouds boil overhead. Near Abingdon, news reaches you. Sir Osric found dead in his wine cellar, throat cut. Rumors blame unpaid mercenaries. You remember the rings in your pouch and wonder if debts ever truly die. But Osric's death means the bounty evaporates. 1 threat down, a cathedral of others to go. At an alehouse that night, Simon confesses he fears the bishop will silence every witness. He'll send killers north, west, anywhere the scrolls might surface. Rain suggests scattering copies across monastic libraries. Truth, like dandelion seeds, thrives when wind blown. You spend hours scripting summaries by candlelight, your cramped hand numbing, but hope glows in the ink's sheen. The final miles to St. Bride's pass through cider orchards bursting into blossom. Petals swirl like confetti of forgiveness. The prioress greets you in the cloister, eyes glittering pride. Yet she bears grim tidings. Plague burst anew. Royal edicts forbid gatherings. Rumors pin blame on heretical nuns. Raids are imminent. She urges immediate hiding. Instead, you unveil your companions in the wider plan, distribute duplicates beyond one convent's walls. The prioress sighs, sees wisdom, summons swift-riding lay brothers. Scrolls are packed into hollowed walking staves, sewn into saddle blankets, even tucked inside beeswax candles. Simon, ever the strategist, drafts letters naming bishops who might join reform rather than fall to scandal. War of parchment, not steel. On the eve of departure, you stand at the monastery wall watching dusk ignite apple blossoms gold. Rain joins, handing you a pewter locket. Inside, a sliver of chalk from the white horse, a reminder of things unerasable. You clasp it, realizing friendships can sprout in gutters and still smell of spring. Before sleep, you ink one last line into a margin. No price too high for truth, but someone must choose to pay. Candle guttering, you pray, not for safety, which time and again proves temporary, but for courage to keep paying. Rain-washed dawn presses a pale blue hush over Westminster Yard. So fragile, you can almost hear the echo of parchment snapping in your satchel each time you breathe. The Thames behind you is a pewter ribbon, barges bobbing like thoughts that haven't made up their minds. One step forward, and you're inside the lion's jaw. The King's Great Council is in session, bishops and barons cloaked in gilt thread and old grudges. Somewhere among them lounges the Bishop of Winchester. Fat purse, fatter secrets, the man whose fingerprints smear every scroll stitched into your hem. If you've followed every hoofbeat and heartbeat to reach this threshold, slide a quill emoji into the chat so I know you're still scribbling alongside us, and give that like button a gentle tap. It tells the algorithm to keep the candles lit while we navigate this hall of whispering lions. Simon walks at your flank in borrowed cannons black, smooth as candle wax, outwardly devout, inwardly calculating how many coins truth might fetch if sold to the right bidder. Rain follows with head bowed, horseboy turned herald, pockets heavy with Osric's stolen rings he'll trade later for bread and boots. Above the cloister, ravens perch on crenelles, black quills twitching. Good omen? Bad? Depends who writes the chronicle. Inside the painted chamber, tapestries smother the walls in crimson and sea-green threads, saints battling sins beneath a ceiling spangled with fleur-de-lis. Courtiers rustle like silk river reeds, while clerks shuffle scrolls taller than rooftops. Each parchment is a plea, a tithe, a treaty, paper armor for men who prefer quills to swords. You, too, carry armor, though yours can pierce as well as shield. Stay steady. The Lord Chancellor raps his staff against tile. Crown business, he bellows. Murmurs die under the wattle and daub hush. A herald drones charges of coin forgery in Kent, wool smuggling in Hull, the usual gnaw of English commerce. Then, a grievance from the Sisters of St. Bride's, Somerset. The bishop lifts a lazy eyebrow. He was sure he'd caged those birds long ago. You breathe in damp wool, breathe out gall. Simon's fingers brush your sleeve, a silent nod. Time to loose the arrow. A lay brother you met on the road steps forward, palms together. From his satchel he retrieves 3 candles, fat beeswax pillars. The hall thinks him about to pray. Instead he snaps each candle in half. Scrolls spill from hollows carved in the wax. Parchment coiled like serpents. Gasps flutter. The brother unrolls the first sheet, voice ringing. Payments rendered by His Grace the Bishop of Winchester for the concealment of brothel revenues and transportation of women to private manors. Chaos detonates. Barons rise, bishops shout, seals clatter. The Bishop of Winchester lurches to his feet, crimson surplice flapping, sputtering about forgeries, lollard lies. But the scroll bears his seal. Same green wax you filched back in Renford, its impression unmistakable. Soldiers step forward, uncertain whose orders ring truer, bishops or councils. The Chancellor bangs staff again. Silence! These are grave accusations. We shall recess for examination. Guards escort the bishop, half dignitary, half prisoner, behind Uras. His eyes skewer you as he passes, recognition flaring. Simon's face drains lily white. Your palm finds reins. One beat, 2. You've lit the fuse. Now run before sparks find wick. Smoke from council torches still hangs in the air when you duck into the cloister garth, boots slapping mossy stone. Simon mutters, "We need sanctuary. Now." Westminster Abbey looms ahead, Gothic ribs and iron-gray forest. But Abbey doors are watched by King's sheriffs who might brand you conspirator as fast as confessor. Instead, you veer left, slipping through a garden gate and into the infirmary walkway, where the Red Cross brothers tend plague sores and arrow wounds with equal, grim calm. Brother Matthew, an apothecary you once bribed for laudanum, squints at your hooded face, then ushers you inside a storeroom smelling of lavender and vinegar. Stay, he says. Guards rarely search where buboes burst. On shelves glow glass vials, rosewater, mandrake, powdered antler. He hands you a rag soaked in rosemary. Hold it to your nose, you'll thank me. Simon paces, cursing alliances already crumbling. Rain examines surgical saws with curiosity better suited to a butcher. Hours ooze by. Outside, the Abbey bell tolls once, twice. Finally, Matthew slips back. Counsel recalled, bishop detained for questioning. No verdict, but tongues wag faster than plague runs. He eyes the ledger bulge at your waist. That parchment is plague to him. It may kill every soul who touches it. You nod. Contagion, indeed. But some infections purge corruption like fever purges illness. Rainey H's to flee west again. Coin in pocket, sea breeze in mind. Simon wants leverage. Promise of royal pardon. You? You want dozens of girls still penned in Southwark stews, released from the bishop's tariffs. You want bribes refunded. You want laws rewritten. Ambition once small as bread crust has grown teeth. Night falls. Lanterns bob along cloister like fireflies. You slip from infirmary, heading toward the scriptorium arch. It's locked, but Simon's stolen key turns smooth. Inside, candlelight kisses shelves upon shelves of chained books. Augustinian homilies, Arabic treatises, romances of Guinevere's tears. A monk dozes at his desk, Rain tiptoes, lifting ink and quills. You spread fresh parchment, pen a bold heading, a declaration of the women of Bankside. Line by line you pour truth, tariffs that steal half their earnings, bailiff raids, clandestine transports, Osric's debauchery, bishop's hush money. Simon reads over shoulder, jaw tight, yet makes no move to stop you. Perhaps he senses the tide turned, and chooses to ride rather than drown. Finished, you sign only a symbol, the broken lantern. You, your watchers, every listener who typed it. 3 copies. One you will nail to St. Paul's north door at dawn, where Lollard manifestos bloom. One to Southwark's Tabard Inn. One to the Abbey's own guest hall. Thunder cracks, rain beats roof, driving any patrol indoors. Perfect. Cloaks drawn, you cross New Palace Yard. A distant cry. Traitors. Knifes the wind. Torches approach, a knot of soldiers led by the bishop's steward. Simon whispers. He moves faster than verdicts. You run. Mud sucks boots, lightning bleaches the night, revealing spearmen closing in. Rain hurls an inkpot. It smashes against the helmet, black droplets raining down like unholy chrism. You pivot into the shadow of scaffolding, where masons repair buttresses. Up you climb, skirts snagging lime-smeared planks. Soldiers clatter below, too encumbered by mail to follow quick. Atop the scaffold, wind tries to shove you into the void. Westminster Hall's roof stretches beneath like a dragon's back. Simon shouts to follow ridge to the west range. Beyond, the Thames gleams and barges wait. You scramble over slippery tiles, heart-drumming dangerous music. One tile skids free, clatters into darkness. A soldier yelps as it cracks his helm. Moonless gloom, rain-stinging eyes. Somehow you reach the far parapet. Rope, left by masons, dangles to an alley where carts stock ale for morning sessions. Rain descends first, lands on a barrel with muffled grunt. Then Simon. Your turn. Halfway down, rope jerks. A knife has severed it above. Soldier on parapet. You fall, twisting, crash onto tarpaulin, air punched from lungs. But bones hold. Rain drags you up. Simon lashes the cart horse into gallop. Hooves thunder through lanes soaked slick. Pursuit fades behind curses and hoof splashes. Over Lambeth Bridge, east along the riverfront, you turn into a tanner's yard, the prioress marked. Safe house run by wool merchants sympathetic to reform. Inside, lime vats steam. The stench hides fugitives better than any alibi. A candle stub casts shaky light on lime-splashed walls. You slump against timber, laughter bubbling hysteric. Simon sinks next to you. For a moment, enemies turned allies share silence only storm can break. Then he says, "If tomorrow the council condemns the bishop, my neck follows." You meet his gaze. "Stand with us publicly, your penance may convert to reward." He scoffs, but fear softens edges. Morning. Rain has peeled back. Dawn strokes rooftops apricot pink. You, cloaked in rain's spare jerkin, stride across St. Paul's churchyard. Beggar's warm hands over brazier, oblivious to scroll tucked under your arm. At the north door, nailed manifestos flutter, sermons, protests, even recipes scrawled by jesters. You add yours, hammerhead ringing 5 times, each strike a pulse felt across the yard. Inside the nave, choirboys rehearse Parsimi Domina. Lines about brevity of life echo under the vault, fitting soundtrack. You slip out unseen, heart oddly light. Mid-morning sees Westminster Yard thronged again. Rumor travels faster than ravens. Bishop arrested for grave immoralities, his see suspended pending clerical inquiry. Commoners gawk, merchants cheer, the bishop taxed shipping ruthlessly. Prostitutes from Southwark parade across London Bridge waving crimson kerchiefs. One girl, maybe 15, grabs your hand, thanks you though she doesn't know why. You feel tears burn. Council pronounces restitution, brothel levies abolished, bailiffs to be tried. St. Bride's granted royal protection for valuable assistance. Your name nowhere. Perfect. Simon approaches in square cap, face pale but determined. I testified, he says. Burned the bridges behind me. You nod, press Osric's rings into his palm. Hush money turns seed money for redemption. He starts to object. You close his fingers. Plant new trees, you whisper. Rain appears with 3 steaming meat pies. Celebration breakfast. The 3 of you sit on a rain-slick bench watching clouds sail like ships toward France. Bells peal, not just Westminster but all of London, each clamor rinsing the air of old rot. Days stretch into a fortnight. In Southwark, you help quill petitions securing safe lodging for women too ill to work. Rain apprentices with the Candlewrights Guild, his quick hands suited to molding tallow into shapes that hide messages. Simon, half penitent, half politic, serves as liaison between convent and crown, a bridge rebuilt plank by plank. One quiet evening you cross the Thames alone, stand mid-bridge, river lamp reflections glimmering. Wind carries echoes of tavern songs. You thumb the pewter locket with white horse chalk. Once you were Aldith the Price Flesh, hunted by bailiffs. Now you are Agnella, quill warrior. The price paid by women like you was unspeakable. Yet tonight a debt is repaid, if only partly. Months later, midsummer. St. Bride's orchard hums with bees. Apple blossoms long fallen, fruit swells ruby red. You sit beneath a yew, teaching novice scribes to mix verdigris ink. One asks if the tales of London scandal are true. You nod, keep details hushed. Legends feed better on suggestion. Across the cloister, rain arrives on a mule, panniers brimming with cathedral candles. Each hollow hides fresh leaflets against new injustices. Simon steps down from saddle, now wearing a simple traveler's mantle. He bows to prioress, offers scrolls about tax relief for flood-ruined peasants. The work continues. At Compline, you light lanterns along the cloister. Their glow gilds limestone, softening shadows. You pause, remembering nights you walked these stones as fugitive, heart thrashing like trapped bird. A novice asks, "Sister, why do we light so many?" You smile, because darkness is honest. It always comes. Our task is to greet it with more light than yesterday. If your eyes grow heavy now, let them. The ledger is closed, the bishop stands trial, and Southwark's lanes breathe freer without his tithe collectors. Somewhere a girl counts her earnings and knows they're hers alone. Somewhere a knight's manor lies abandoned, shutters banging like belated apologies. Somewhere a bishop sits in a cold cell, pondering how parchment cut his empire to ragged ribbons. And somewhere, perhaps, on the very shelf beside your bed, lies a tiny broken lantern carved from apple wood. A reminder that stories once kindled can guide strangers through plague, through power, even through the oldest price's pleasure ever exacted. So to you listening under quilts or headphones, thank you for treading each perilous mile. If this saga kept you wandering wide-eyed or lulled you gently towards sleep, let me know with a soft lantern lit in the comments. Share the tale with any friend who thinks history is just kings and war. They deserve to meet Aldith, Simon, Rain, and the unrecorded thousands who paid with coin, flesh, and pen. And if you haven't yet, tap subscribe. Next week's journey will carry us to a silent library where every gesture and every key could rewrite salvation. Until then, may your ink never blot, your lantern never dim, and your dreams lead you safely home.